from don't make it out. I know that I'm blessed. There's a few L's and millions, so turn that loss to a chance.
Seriously, thank you for being here. For those of you that don't know Chuck Essegian, I have known Chuck now for probably going on a decade. I mean, right?
I was thinking like 12 years.
Little over, yeah, maybe 12 years. And, you know, when you meet somebody and there's just chemistry, right? There's just an affinity towards that person without either party needing to try. I don't know, maybe it's because we're both from California or we've spent time there. That might be it. But anyway, he's just salt of the earth, like really somebody that I've respected from the way that he approaches his business, which is an approach of relationship first. And it's something I try to do with my business. But man, Chuck is an incredible human being, an amazing husband, father, an amazing business owner, runs Paramount Title. And brother, I'm just glad that you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, I can't thank you enough for having me. This has been an honor, and I've been looking forward to this. So,
yeah, dude.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Cool.
I mean, it's not like we're really doing a show. It's
just like we're talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is the best part about our business, right? Is yes, you're a client. Yes, you're a customer, but the best part is that you're my friend. You know what I mean? It's like it goes beyond business. Mm-hmm. And I don't have that relationship with everybody, but I think a lot of my clients I do. And those are the ones that I gravitate more towards, like yourself. So I feel the same way. I still remember where we were, who introduced us. And I knew coming out of that meeting, from meeting you, that would be a guy that would be in my life or in my work life, moving forward. And we've just I know we did a bunch of business together, and then we both kind of drifted apart, and now we're back again. So it's amazing.
Yeah. It's cool. And every time I see you, man, it's like we pick up right where we left off, and to me, that's when I know that there's a real relationship there where you can kind of pick up where you left off. And hopefully our time doesn't go by without us hanging out or something,
No, yeah, I'll be a pain in your neck. I'll be by the office every 3 weeks or so.
For those people though that don't know you, why don't you tell everybody who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm Chuck Essegian. I've been in Colorado since 2006. I've been in Title since 1991. We moved here, my wife and I, when my oldest Brett was 10, Tyler was 7, my daughter was 4, and they're 27, 25, and 22. We were just looking for a better place to raise our kids. Southern California was an incredible place to grow up.
Which part?
So we were in Ventura County, all between like Calabasas, Thousand Oaks. So you're between LA and Santa Barbara. We were 8 miles, 10 miles from the ocean. So you had the beach, you had the Santa Monica Mountains. It was incredible. And as years went by, it started becoming more populated, and I love the outdoors. And so we looked, I want to say back in 03, 04, 05, at maybe moving out of state. Business was really successful in Southern California at the time, and so we kept putting it off. Finally, in, I want to say 05, we bought a house out here and rented it out for a year because I knew that would kind of propel us out to Colorado. We were just looking for a better place to raise our kids.
Were you in the title business in California?
So I was. So I worked at Fidelity Title out there for 17 years, all with the same company. Bill Foley was my boss, the CEO, a great man. I had a few great mentors and some kind of bosses out there. And he was an incredible guy to work for, and stayed with them and transferred, gave him a year's notice out in California before we moved out here to Colorado. But the company that I came to work for out here was run a little bit differently than what I was used to in Southern California. So that's why we started Paramount in I want to say right in 2008.
Yeah, very cool. Was it you that had interest in Colorado, or was it your wife, or what? Why Colorado? I mean, so there's a lot of great reasons, but
yes,
you could have kind of picked anywhere.
So that's true. So we looked at, my first preference would have been Montana, and coming from Southern California, where you had everything from sports and culture, anything you wanted to do, right? It was an incredible place to grow up, but just became so populated. And so going with my cousins, my dad, my uncle. We've been going up to Montana for over 40 years fishing. And as a matter of fact, after Brandy and I were dating for 6 months, I said, come on, I'm going to take you on a road trip. So we went through Montana, through Oregon, we just got in the car and drove and fished for 10 days and camped. And so she liked it.
Did she like that? Or?
Yeah. Yes. At least she said at the time she did.
Yeah.
So
was she trying to impress you, or you trying to impress her?
Well, probably a little bit of both. Yeah. But so I knew then that would be somebody that I could definitely see a future with. So I guess we picked Colorado because I really wanted to go to Montana. Probably the Bozeman area, a smaller town back 20 years ago, maybe 30,000 people. And
what was the appeal for you with a small town? Was it just different than what you were used to, or?
Maybe, you know what? Even though I grew up in Southern California, yes, I love the ocean. I love the outdoors, and whether it be backpacking as a little kid, whether it be fishing, whether it be camping, just all that stuff. I just kind of like what a small town had to offer. And so Brandy's like going, okay, we can't move from Southern California to Bozeman. There's 30,000 people. The next closest town has like 5,000 people 20 minutes away. What do we do?
Yeah.
So, and she had a good point, because being in the title business for 17 years, I probably couldn't make the type of a living that I was used to in Southern California just because of the lack of people, lack of business, lack of deals. So we really looked at 3 different cities. We looked at Portland, Oregon, we looked at Boise, Idaho, and we looked at Denver, Colorado. And we fell in love with Denver and Colorado. I mean, what doesn't Colorado have, right, to offer? So basically, we turned in the beach and for the mountains. And I want to say my oldest son knew how to surf, but now he is a cowboy. All 3 of my kids love to fly fish. They love the outdoors. So it was a great spot to raise our kids.
That's awesome. How did you, as a father, when is it that you started to introduce some of those activities to the kids? And was there ever like a level of encouragement from you to move in a particular direction, or did you raise them from the perspective of like, I'm going to kind of let them gravitate and then I'll encourage whatever they tend to like?
No, that's a good question. And you're talking about outdoors and liking?
Yeah, that or sports or just anything that now they're into.
Right. That's a great question. I just wanted to expose them to everything. I was exposed to sports at an early age. I played sports through high school, through college. I wanted to.
What'd you play?
Football.
Okay.
I played football, baseball, kind of growing up, and then played football in college.
Did you have a preference between the two?
I like football in football season and baseball during baseball season. So,
okay. Yeah.
So I wanted to introduce them to that, as well as the outdoors, because I don't know. I think a lot of people are introduced to sports, but maybe not the outdoors as much. And then if they enjoyed it, then I would encourage them to play, right? I wasn't the dad that was telling my kids, hey, you need to go play this. This is what you need to do. But try to expose them to it and then let them kind of follow their own path and then be there for them. So, and that's kind of what my dad did for me, right? He exposed me to sports. And if I wanted to go play or go take BP, he would always, I'd ask him, and every time he'd be down there. So it's not like, let's go, you got to go play. Let's go, you got to go work out. So, and then the outdoors, I want to say my dad ended up going back to law school at age 40. So he's got 3 young kids, a family. And so I want to say there were some times that were lean for us, because now he's going to law school at age 40. Mm-hmm. He's got 3 kids. So not like a lot of my friends and neighbors back in Southern California taking their vacations to Hawaii and, Costa Rica and going to places. So what could we afford to do? It's like we went backpacking in the Sierras because it was inexpensive. And looking back at it now, those are some of the best times, going with my dad, my cousins, my dad's best friend, my family, my mom. And then it's just kind of funny because I took my middle son to the same place we used to go backpacking when I was 10. Actually, I was 8. We went up there the first time, and I just turned 60 this year. So it's 52 years ago. I took my middle son up there 3 years.
Are you looking at this guy?
Oh, dude, stop.
Bro, First of all, you kind of like, you got a little bit of a pretty boy look going on,
Oh,
you
dude,
know,
come on.
but you're an outdoors guy, right? So I know, but I wouldn't say I'm an outdoors guy, maybe like you are, but
You like
dude,
to
you don't
surf,
look
you
like
like-
60, that's for sure. Seriously, I would have no idea. That's crazy.
So yeah, I want to say, so I took my middle son up back there 3 years ago, and my older son was having knee surgery, or just had knee surgery at the time. So the three of us are going to be going out to the pass and hiking up backpacking where we started to go when I was 8 years old. So we're driving 17 hours this summer in August. And we're going to actually go hike the exact same pass, and we won't see anybody for a week or so when we go up there. And so the three of us are now, I'm just kind of sharing that with my boys. And if my daughter wants to go, I'd love her to come, but, and I know she could do it, but I know my boys really want to do it. So
Such an interesting dichotomy when I meet somebody like yourself, where, you know, you've got success in business, right, and success with your family, and you have there's this other part of you, and I find that a lot of times super successful people have this other part of them, and I'm curious how nature and the outdoors, how that has helped with your business, or what it has done to give you a different perspective, and how you think that has helped you with your business.
that's a good question for me. And well, I can tell you it's kind of a place I go to get away from everything, right? This business is stressful enough. I mean, I was in the real estate business for 3 years prior to getting the title business, and I've been in that since 1991. You've been doing loans forever. You know how stressful this business is. So for me, whether it be escaping to go to Montana for a week or 10 days to just decompress, get away from, you know, back in the days, it's like, I remember I'd be getting 100, you know, texts a day, you know, back before we had our iPhones now. And it's just like, it would be 10, 11 hours a day, nonstop, getting back to clients. And so for me, my safe spot, my place to just release, to go unwind, and to just be there with either my family, my close friends, my cousins, is in the mountains. And it's fishing, it's the outdoors. And so I can just go take 6 months worth of stress and say, okay, I got a week or 10 days. I can go unwind. And everybody needs to unwind. Everybody needs to reset, right? To just kind of get back into that mental place to say, okay, I've kind of decompressed for a week or 10 days. I'm ready to go back and go fight the fight. And here we go, and start making sales calls again. So yeah, the outdoors to me is everything.
It gives you that recharge that you need to be effective with what you do.
Oh my God. And not just physically, but mentally, right? Mm-hmm. Especially because you know how this business, it's feast or famine. It's like never perfect, because it's never just the right amount of business where we're all making a decent living, but there's no stress. There's stress when it's too slow. There's stress when it's too busy. Okay. So our business is, to me, there's stress in it all the time, whether you're making a ton of money or not making a ton of money. So yeah, to be able to mentally get away from it for a week or 10 days every 6 months, that's kind of my way to recoup and recharge myself.
I want to go back to something for a second, because earlier you were talking about how, you know, growing up and your dad going back to school for law. Did he become an attorney?
He did.
Yeah,
so
what did he practice, or what does he practice?
So he's retired now. So seeing that is something that has shaped me. So he ended up playing professional baseball in the 50s and 60s. Retired at, I want to say, I'm just guessing, age 32, 33. He went to Japan for a year, played after he retired here. I was just a baby. I was like 1 year old. And then so I'm thinking he's in his early 30s. Then he went he was in the movie business for about 6 years. And then I think at the age of 40, 41, he just wanted to go be his own boss. So then
sounds like he's been an entrepreneur his whole life. I mean, in totally different fields. Like, that's remarkable, right? You go from a professional baseball player to then he goes into movies to then now studying law. I mean, when you were growing up with him as an example, like looking back, now that you're a father and older, looking back on your own kids, I would imagine that was admirable, or like he was your hero. What was that like, though, as a younger man growing up?
No, it was actually really cool. As he was my hero as a kid going up, seeing everything that he did, and he would let me tag along whether we go to old timers games. So I used to go be able to travel with him, and then seeing and just kind of knowing. I want to say I was probably an early teen, maybe 10, 11, 12. Then I knew what he was doing. I do have memories of going back to like in Century City and seeing movies, just in a movie theater all by myself. But I really remember, like then at age 40, seeing him struggle, right? Because back then they didn't make the money that they do now, right? At age 40, 41, 42, going back to law school, having no income for 3 or 4 years, supporting a family. And so those were some of the lean times that we went through, and why, because he wasn't making any money for 3 or 4 years, why our trips really took us to the Sierras and started backpacking, because we didn't have money like a lot of everybody else or other people did to take the nicer vacations.
But I want to point something out that you said earlier. I think it's really important for everybody to hear this. You had said that even though those were lean years, that those were some of the best memories of your life. And I want to touch on that because I think a lot of times, whether we're parents or whether we're 40 and now having to reinvent ourselves or go do something, or maybe we're in a season in life where it's not great and it is lean and finances are tough and there's a lot of stress that comes along with that. And maybe you just found out that your wife is pregnant or you have a family that you're raising. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in the pressure around us from external sources. There's more opportunity and more transfer of wealth happening now than any other time in history, right? So kudos to you for taking a stab at it. And of course, it turned out to be very successful for you. But, how did you get through some of the times in the beginning, especially 2008, where you're right, everybody's closing up shop. It was the largest, financial collapse we had seen, I think, in history, and, a lot of loss of wealth during that time, and people were scared, right? People were committing suicide, and, if you've ever watched The Big Short, right, that's kind of what that's all about. But, how did you guys get through that when you knew it was
I think for me personally, just kind of looking back to a few different things, maybe kind of the mentors that I had, whether it be seeing what my dad did, seeing what some of my dad's friends did. One of my dad's friends was head baseball coach at UCLA for 40 years. He's in their Hall of Fame, and he was like a grandfather to me. So seeing what he did, how he was maybe with his team, how then after he got out, he was still coaching in high school when he didn't need to do that. Seeing some of my dad's other friends, there's 2 or 3 that come to mind that were almost like other father figures to me. One was an extremely successful artist, another is a dentist. So from all walks of life, but just seeing that kind of mentorship, what they all did to become successful. But then I think also sports had so much to do with it. And I think sports as a little kid teaches you so many life lessons that you don't realize that you can apply and use later on in life, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're good, if you're bad, but you're on a team. So, and I don't care if you're in high school, junior high, college, whatever you play, but I mean, competition, right? It teaches you, drive. It teaches you work ethic. It teaches you how to get along with your teammates. There's sacrifice. Maybe you're better and you want to play a certain position in the sport, but your team needs you somewhere else. So you got to sacrifice. It teaches you how to deal with losing, right? How to be a gracious winner. So I think everything that I loved about sports, and not realizing when I'm 10, 11, 12, 13 through, 20 years old, helped me just say, okay, it doesn't matter what the economy is, what the market is like. I'm going to attack this new business. We have our own way that we want to run our business, and I just never gave it any thought, to be honest with you. I just knew that we would be successful, whether it was a shitty market, a good market, but that we could put kind of our stamp on it, run our business how we want. And even though people were telling us, hey, it's not a good time, don't do it, you guys are idiots, you guys are fools, it's like Kip and I just looked at each other and said, dude, we got this. We're going to make it work.
And I think a lot of people will give you their opinion, right? Whether you ask for it or not.
Without a doubt.
And they're going to give you all the reasons why you shouldn't, or why it's not going to work. And, you know, sometimes I just wonder, like, you know, I've been through bouts of procrastination, or like where I'll overanalyze something and I take forever to like do the thing. I'd say that's the outlier. In general, I'm somebody that, you know, it's like I've got the idea and I just go do it, and then I'm like, I'll figure out the rest later. For you at that time, who were you? Like, were you the person that just, you guys had the idea and you just went after it? Or was there like, you guys sat down for 6 months and wrote a business plan and, you know, started. Yeah.
No, we just both knew, I think, that we were in a position that we didn't want to be in, right? Him at his company, me at my company. We really got along off the field. We didn't even talk business for the first year we knew each other, right? It just was, he was a good friend. And we didn't really talk business, but I trusted him. He trusted me. And trust is is so important if you go into business with somebody else. Because I've had besides him, I've had one other person. I'll shout out to Vicky Hughes out there in Southern California. Was the one other partner in 17 years in California that I trusted, that always had my back and would work as hard as I would. So, no, we didn't put together a business plan. I mean, we did but it wasn't anything like we spent 6 months saying, okay, we got to do this, we got to put this in plan. It's like, we both said, we know what the market's doing. We know we're unhappy where we're at. We both have the same ideals and drive, and we just said, no, let's go make this happen, and we did.
And everybody's different, but for those of you listening to this, like, and you know who you are, if you're sitting in a place where you're going, man, I have been thinking about this idea now for the last 2 years, right? Or like I'm currently in this phase where I'm researching and I want everything to be perfect. I got to understand it 100% because, you know, and then we come up with all the, like, what if somebody asks me about it? I got to know what every, you know, loan product on the planet is, right? Or whatever. And that could translate to any business. But if you're that type of person, and I've shared this before, but I'll share it again. You know, I was that person, which pissed me off because I was never that person, but I was that person over these last 2 years with like the media company that we're launching, starting the podcast. And I don't know what it was, man, but it was like, and I don't know if it has to do with age, but I got to this place where I was just, you know, it's like I felt like my risks needed to be more calculated. And so I had done all this research. I mean, 2 years of content, researching equipment, identifying brand strategies, like everything you possibly could do, I did. And I got to this point where I was finally like, what am I doing? I could keep doing this forever.
Right.
And I knew I had to actually do something, not think about doing something, but actually do something when it started to really piss me off that I was in this place that I wasn't doing something, right?
Yep.
So then I finally said, fuck it. I've got what I need, at least to get this thing going. I have no idea. Like, I don't have systems set up. I don't have anything like really figured out. But one thing I do know is I know how to talk to people. Exactly. And I'm going to call a few people that I know, and I'm just going to start doing this thing. The first 2 weeks of filming in this podcast and starting to generate content for personal brand, I learned more in 2 weeks than I did in 2 years. And I think there's just something to be said about realizing if you are someone that's in that place, like, not that there can be some preparation, sure, right? But the truth is no matter how much preparation you do, you will never, ever get the aha moments and the realizations, and your mind will never be opened and learn what it needs to learn and understand until you actually do something. And so for those of you that are in that place, I would challenge you to identify what that thing is that you need to do and just go fucking do it.
I agree 100%. And that was our attitude, right? Because you can keep looking for excuses not to do it. And I don't think anybody, it doesn't matter what you want to start, is going to start a company, I don't care who you are, in the perfect condition. There's always going to be
Why do you think so many
roadblocks.
people wait for that perfect condition? Or why do you think so many people do that research and analysis and preparation?
Maybe because it's easier to just keep putting it off and procrastinating than just say, like you said, fuck it, let's roll up our sleeves and attack it. And so I just think, and I'm not saying not to prepare a little bit. And
Of course.
Right? But I'm saying if you have a dream, if you have a goal, if you have something you want to do what you need to do and then say, go for it. I mean, because the longer you put it off, I don't know, like, was there anything that you really found, like, that was in 2 years prior to doing it? Look at you. You've only been doing it for a month, 2 months?
Yeah, like a month.
And you're already killing it.
Dude, I think that it's ego. Now, I would not have had this realization if I hadn't have just done it. But I think so much of it's ego. And let me explain what I mean. Well, I think that everybody has an innate desire to want to be recognized and to have some level of significance. And so then I think, our brain is there to protect us and to help us survive, right? And so when we start thinking about, like, well, shit, what if I do it and it doesn't work? Or what if I do it and I'm a horrible host, or I don't know how to interview, or I fumble over my words, or like all the shit that we tell ourselves in any given situation. Then if I mess it up, then there goes my chance to make this successful. And if there goes my chance, then I just wasted all this time, and then people aren't going to like me. And it's this whole like mental gymnastics thing. But the reality is like we don't learn a lesson, and we don't take that next step and become great without failing. It's like we have to go through the failure. We just have to go through that. So now it's like, how do we go through the failure faster, and knowing that, and learn from it?
Yeah, and learn what not to do and maybe the different path to take. And that's a tough question. I think it's different for everybody. And I hate to keep bringing back, like, for me, sports, but it teaches you so many life lessons, right? And you fail.
Is there one that, like, in particular in sports that you would say is most valuable?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's, I guess, so many, like, little ones, right? But it just teaches you. So that just
how to lose, you said.
Yeah, with failure, right? I mean, you're in the Hall of Fame if you hit 300, right, in the base in MLB, and that means you're failing 7 out of 10 times. So, but those are all the great things that sports, to me, taught me, right? Like all the things I mentioned prior. So it's just, and you hear all the cliches, right, about, hey, it doesn't matter if you get knocked down 10 times, you better be getting up 11, right? It just, to me, it's like, I love competition. Whether when I was at the national company, it's like it didn't matter every month. I was about in the top 3 for the last 5 years nationally with this company, but I would look at my stats for the first 17 years in this business at the end of every month when the market share report came out, and I would have been pissed if I did not finish first. If there's 25 companies I'm comparing myself to, if I didn't finish first, I was pissed. So every month, right? So like that to me is through sports, and maybe a little bit of kind of what I picked up seeing, some family influences, but I think it's also internally kind of what drives you and maybe who you are. And not everybody likes competition. I mean, like we were talking about that now, right? It's just like with our kids going back.
No, listen, not everybody likes competition, but I think the reason they don't like it is because it gives them an excuse to be mediocre.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'm just going back to the kids, right? And you're talking about how the younger kids now, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's so many parents that are saying, hey, no, we can't give out a trophy for first place because that means everybody else didn't win. It's like, dude, what's a participation trophy?
Yeah, right.
If I raised my kids that way, they wouldn't be successful. And if you and I thought that way, oh, well, hey, it's okay to fail. Right? It's okay not to be good at something. It's then how do you bounce back from that and be better at it and improve? And so I hate to just keep bringing everything back to sports. There's just so many life lessons.
Yeah. So I like asking this question a lot because I get different answers, but how much of it do you think is something, and when I say it, I mean the hustle, right? The mindset or the drive to win. How much of that do you believe people are born with versus it's taught and they learn it?
That's a good question. It's hard for me I know exactly where you're going, and I think that is something that, and I guess I like to say, like, I think I was born with it, but I also think I learned to, as a young kid and through sports, it's like, dude, I didn't want to lose at anything, right? So I think as I grew and was involved in sports, but also having that maybe inside of me to begin with, I just think it grew over time to where everything to me was a competition. We'll play Monopoly or cards, and I'm playing with my kids or family, and it's like, or ping pong, which we play all the time, and it's like, my boys are better than me now, and it sucks. Right?
You just get pissed off? You throw the pong thing paddle at them?
Well, I don't do that, but we have heated arguments in our basement, right? And it's like...
That's funny.
So everything to me, right? Life is competition. And so I guess I think maybe you're either born with it, and I'm not saying that if you're not born with that innate desire to compete and be better than somebody, that you can't learn it, right, through examples, because I think you definitely can. And I think I was born with it. I know you were born with it as well, because you wouldn't be a businessman. You would be getting, right? Nobody pays us a salary. Dude, you and I could make $0, or you and I could make $2 million. It just all depends on how hard we work. And, people that go take a salary job, I think they have a different mindset than you and I. So,
and that different mindset, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that for me, unless that same individual is complaining about how miserable their life is and they're not doing anything about it, because there's something that can be done about it. It's just a question of, and a lot of this stuff is cliche, right? But like, glass is half empty, glass is half full. I have a really hard time, and I'm not shitting on anybody or judging them for this, but like, I just have a difficult time understanding how, if you have the ability to make a choice and you can choose to, hey, I'm going to choose to think about this situation positively, or I'm going to think about it negatively. Now, the person who thinks about everything negatively might say, well, I don't have a choice, and it's just, maybe it's a victim mentality, and they're doing this to me, and this is why, and this is why, and they're complaining, and they can't see another way. But the reality is it is a choice. We're deciding whether or not we want to think about it half full or half empty.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
It is a choice. And you just need to be, I just pray that people are strong enough to say, hey, I want to take the hard road. I will do whatever I can to get up off my ass and be successful. Instead of, you see it. Denver's a different city here, and not to change topics, right? But it's like, and not to get political or anything, but I wouldn't, like, you just see so many people making it so easy for so many people to just have their hand out. And I just think to myself, dude, this is what you're going to get. You're going to have your handout taken from the government. This is all you're going to get for the rest of your life. Why wouldn't you say, fuck that? I'm not going to take from the government and live a miserable life for the next 50 years. Dude, I want to go make something of myself. And so now you need to step out maybe of your comfort zone. And I don't care if you start off, like I've used this example with my kids a million times. Like if I started and didn't go to college, and I don't think you need to go to college and get a degree to be successful either. But if I started at 18 years old working at McDonald's and I was flipping burgers, right? I told my kids, I said, I just think by the time I'm 19, maybe I'm a cashier. By the time I'm 20, I'm maybe a shift lead. By the time I'm 25, maybe I'm running that McDonald's. And by the time I'm 30, maybe I'm running all the McDonald's in Colorado. And to me, that's the mentality you need to have, right?
Absolutely.
And I know we were talking about mentality and doing something versus, so I'm just using that as just a.
Yeah, I think that it's tricky, and like when you think of, there have been times in my life where I've been really in a bad place. We've talked about I've struggled with addiction on and off my whole life pretty much, and so with that comes depression, times where things are really dark. 2008 for me, 2009 really. Same thing. I mean,
I was right
dude,
there with you.
I lived in Sherman Oaks, California.
Dude, are you serious?
Yeah.
It was Sherman Oaks?
Sherman Oaks, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I know that area real well. I grew up in Calabasas, so between
my wife is from Thousand Oaks.
Dude, oh my God. How did I not know that?
Yeah,
so my dad used to work in the City National Bank building in Encino right there.
Oh, right there, down the street.
The black building, yeah.
So I lived in a $2 million house. This is in 2009. And I'll never forget it. I walk out of my garage that day. It was in the hills, right below Mulholland, but on the valley side.
The 101 and 405.
Right there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically where I lived. And I see the flatbed truck taking away my $100,000 Escalade, and I didn't have another car. So here I am in this $2 million home, now walking everywhere, and no money. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. Banks really aren't lending money, and that was probably the most difficult time in my entire life. I was really, really deep in addiction. But there was always something inside of me that just knew that this was not how my life was supposed to end. This was not, there was something more. There was a greater purpose. There was something that I was meant to do. I just didn't know what it was. And just for anybody listening, if you're in that place where it's that dark for you, I think it's important that you're not alone. Like many other people are in that same place right now, or have been, and there are options for you to get help. But what would you say, Chuck, to the person that is in that place where, and it can be addiction, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be what is a dark place for them. I talked to a client earlier who just is going through a divorce, and I could just tell, man, like he was struggling, and for those individuals that are listening to this, where they're in a place where they're struggling, but they want more, they believe that there is more. Like, what suggestions would you give to that person to get themselves out of that place and start moving in the right direction?
That's a good question. And it's funny. It's actually not funny, but when I just remember my sister flying out to ASU when I graduated at 22, and I knew something was wrong, and I found out my parents were getting a divorce when I was 22, and so that is talking about divorce. I still have a hard time with that now at 60 years old, 40 years later. So. But I guess I think back more to 2008. So it's basically about the same time, right? All that you were going through a tough time. And I'm Armenian. I was born Christian. I think Armenians, I didn't even tap into that. But also my grandma as a young kid had a big impact on my life because of what she went through. So I don't know if you know anything about the Armenian massacre. The Armenians were one of the first groups to adopt Christianity. They were massacred, about 1.5 million by the Turks because they were Muslim. So my grandma and my great aunt, I remember them telling me stories all the time, right? How important family was. Family was everything. Like they saw 8 or 10 of their brothers killed. They were orphaned. They killed her dad. They shoot them out in the desert. They were out in the desert. Their tongues were swollen up. They were about ready to die. They were, I want to think, maybe they were like 6 and 10, my grandma's older sister. So they were in an orphanage for years, and then they came through Ellis Island to the United States, and so they started a family. But all I heard from them was family, family, family. That's everything. And just hearing the stories of what they went through. I guess the two things for me would be, I would turn in tough times for me would be to my family. I've got cousins that are like brothers to me, my sisters, obviously, and now as I'm older, my wife, and then I also, back in 2008, I turned back to God. It had been a long time since, not that you need to go to church to be a Christian, to be a believer, but it was 2008. It's like God spoke to me, and I know a lot of people really turn to God during their darkest hours, and that's kind of when I turned back to Him in 2008. But since, it's like, you know what, I thank God for everything I do have, right? Not just the bad times, but it's the good times as well. So I would just say, I know for me, I would lean into my family and close friends, but then also that's when I started my relationship back with God again in 2008. So, and I know for everybody it's going to be a different answer, but for me, those were kind of the two things that I guess I turned to, were my family and super close friends, to be able to get things off your chest. That I think, we're talking about, that is maybe one of the things that men, they just take on everything, and maybe they seem like they're weak if they, want to tell you about it. You know what I'm saying? We were just kind of, or at least I was brought up to just, you deal with your feelings. You don't tell anybody about it. You just deal with it and take it on. Well, there's only so much men can take on without getting it off their chest, without sharing it with somebody. So I think having close family, close friends, and then for me also turning back into God. So,
dude, I love hearing that. And, my personal faith has been kind of all over the place my whole life. I was born into a Catholic family. My great uncle was a Catholic priest. I was baptized. I then was baptized as a Christian when I was 23 years old, and got really into Christianity. And it's sort of been, off and on. And then as I've struggled with addiction, and I've gone through a 12-step program, through a lot of that work, they talk about a higher power. And I think there is something for me that happens, and I would imagine for a lot of people, where there's this intellectual component of God where it's a struggle, where it is like, to even say the word God, I think for some people is really difficult. So I just wanted to say, like, I would encourage anybody that's that person that's struggling with saying God or Jesus, or putting that type of a name to it. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a higher power, and that higher power can be nature. That higher power can be energy of a group of people. And I think the key to it is just continuing to search and seek. And even if you don't believe in it, just try praying. And over time, there will be a relationship that gets developed with this higher power. And that higher power might be God for you, but it can mean different things for different people. And I think faith is a big thing. And I think family is amazing. I also would add, one thing to that. If you think about religion for a second, you've got at least in most traditional, like Catholic churches, you've got confession, right? Having the perspective of a 12-step program where you have a sponsor and you're going through this step work, which is basically a series of like you getting all the shit you've ever done out of your head and your heart and onto paper, and then you're sharing that with somebody. I would say that there is so much power in having that. And so, you know, for anybody that's in that dark place, if you can find someone, it could be a family member, but it doesn't have to be. Even if you're not like the best of friends with this person, but if you can somehow find somebody to essentially confess to, where you can say all the dark shit or the shit that you have shame and guilt around, and you can share that with somebody. And if you're not ready to share it with a human being, you can write down. And then something that's worked for me lately, you know, I was having a really hard day a couple of weeks ago, and I was in the car, and what went through my head in that moment is I should call my sponsor, but I decided not to, which, you know, we can debate whether I should have or shouldn't have or whatever, but I didn't. Instead, what I did is I decided to take my phone out and I filmed a video. Now, I know this might sound crazy to some people, but it gave me the same relief and the same feeling as though I was going to confession or sharing something with my sponsor. It was the concept of an observer or a third party listening to the shit that I had on my mind and in my heart. And also, how selfish would I have been to have kept that in rather than maybe share a video with the world that could help save somebody else? And so I decided to do it on a video. And ever since that day, I'm like, dude, I'm just going to share what's on my heart and what's on my mind. And I'm going to put it out there, and maybe I can reach somebody with it.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, and that's, I love to hear that. And I agree completely. That's kind of something I was tying into, right? When you're taught, whether it be a friend, whether it be God, but it doesn't need to be, or a family member, it doesn't need to be that. Like you said, here you are filming yourself. So your iPhone is filming. It's like you're having a conversation, right, with whoever you're going to share that with. But I think, like I was mentioning earlier before, the way, at least I grew up, it was hard for a man to say, I'm going to expose myself, open up some of my deepest fears and my secrets and go to people for help. But getting it off your chest, I think, is huge.
So, and I've had that perspective too, where it's like, because there is this sort of unspoken pressure as a man to like keep it all together. And how am I supposed to be a leader and keep it all together and yet be vulnerable and let people in? And I've struggled with that, man. And I think like everybody has to make their own decision on that. But if you're somebody where you're in a place where, and this goes back to the glass half full, half empty thing, like you can choose. So you can either choose to keep it bottled up and not share that shit, and that's probably why you're in the place you're in to begin with, because you've just bottled it up forever, exactly. Right? Or you can choose to share it with someone that you trust, that loves you, or a frickin' video camera or something, and maybe if you try that, that will result in a different outcome.
I agree completely.
Dude, I love you, bro. Thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate this.
Yeah, and for those that don't know you or know where to find you, where can they find you?
So cell phone 303-304-7603, or you can just Google Paramount Title. I run the sales department. I am the owner with my business partner, Kip Schoenborn. But please feel free to call. I'd love to chat with you. And it's like, that's what this business is all about, right? It's like, I love giving back. I love helping people. I love to help people if they can make more money, if they can be better at what they do. And it just doesn't need to be entitled. I mean, if I can impart some wisdom to you, like you are so much better at social media than I am, like that's because I'm old school. So that I can, and I think I have the perspective, even though I've been doing this 32 years, I can go learn from somebody like my son, who's already really successful. He's 25 years old. He's only been in the business 2 years, but he's teaching me things. And I just think you need to be open to everybody. Like if you think you know it all, you don't. And I just try to be as open as I can to, if I can take some wisdom from Derek Tolnay, if I can take some wisdom from somebody else, and they might have only been in this business 2 years, and if I can impart something that can help me, dude, that's what this business is all about, is helping each other.
Well, thanks again, and great for coming out. That was fun.
Turn that loss to a check. Every time that I see a limit, I push right past it. Don't care if you got here first, the one to win is the last one standing. Say my life is like luck, nah, I had to plan it. The way I work is out of this earth.